In 1964, Adler founded Dunhill Records, but sold it to ABC 3 years later, in 1967, when he formed Ode Records. Adler went on to sign Spirit, Cheech and Chong, and Carole King to Ode. In 1971, King's Tapestry, produced by Adler, became one of the most important records and biggest selling albums of the decade.
You know, the Grassroots might be the most unintentionally ironic moniker in all of music. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I'm sure I must have heard the Grassroots as a kid, but I don't know that I have a clear memory of anything specific. And like I always do, I did a bit of research, so here are the 5 things for the Grassroots. The story starts with Lou Adler. And Lou Adler started out as the co-manager of Jan and Dean. During his career, he helped to organize the Monterey Pop Festival, produced albums by everyone from the Mamas and the Papas to Carole King, even produced Cheech and Chong's albums and their movies. But for this story, the most important thing you need to know is that Lou Adler co-founded Dunhill Records. His idea was to use the Hit Factory model that Motown and Stax had used, only for LA folk and pop rock. Before Dunhill got its own imprint, they were a production company, and their main client was Johnny Rivers. You remember his Secret Agent Man? Johnny Rivers had become something of a big deal not only for the success of Secret Agent Man on its own, but also it was used as the theme song for a highly popular British spy series called Danger Man. When Dunhill opened their label, the songwriting team behind Secret Agent Man, P.F. Sloan and Steve Barry, were hired as staff songwriters. When Sloan and Barry first started work for Dunhill, they were hired under the name The Fantastic Baggies, one of a number of bands, some real, some bogus, that they were linked to before joining on with Lou Adler. Yep, they were also Philip and Stephen,
You're so far away.
the Wildcats, the Lifeguards, the Street Cleaners, the Rally Packs, and their first Dunhill single was released as Willie and the Wheels. This was all just in 1964 and 65. Eventually, Dunhill was able to assemble something of a house band of their own, consisting of Sloan and Barry, but also a few members of the Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine, Larry Netchell, and Tommy Tedesco. In 1965, this house band, plus former New Christie Minstrels vocalist Barry McGuire, recorded a single written by Sloan and Barry, one they had originally intended for the Byrds, called Eve of Destruction.
We're on the eve of destruction.
And that was Sloan and Barry's catalyst to finally put together a for-real touring band of their own. So they found a folk rock band out of San Francisco who had just won a Battle of the Bands contest called the Bedouins. They convinced them to tour Sloan and Barry's tunes, and they gave this new band the name The Grassroots. The band recorded and released only one single as The Grassroots, a cover of Dylan's Ballad of a Thin Man.
Do you, Mr. Jones?
It didn't do too much on the charts, and the Bedouins ended up leaving and going back to San Francisco. But Sloan and Barry weren't done with the folk rock thing yet, so they took another song that they'd recorded with the Bedouins, added tracks performed by studio musicians, and released a full album. The song and accompanying album were called Where Were You When I Needed You?
Where were you when I needed you?
The single did well, but the album did not. Trouble was, they could no longer go on tour to promote it. But as luck would have it, they found another existing band called the 13th Floor. Not the 13th Floor Elevators, mind you. And recruited them to tour as the Grassroots. And that gets us to the classic lineup. Rob Grill on lead vocals and bass, Warren Entner and Creed Bratton on guitars.
This is Creed, and he is in charge of something.
Rick Kuntz on drums. And that's the irony. The band was called The Grassroots, but it started out as a vanity project for 2 record company songwriters and was made up entirely of hired professionals from other bands. Not very Grassroots, if you ask me. Starting with The Grassroots' second album, Let's Live for Today, and going all the way through the rest of the 60s, the studio recordings were made by Wrecking Crew musicians with singles written by Dunhill songwriters and occasional B-sides written and recorded by the members of the touring band. And this started to frustrate the touring band, who wanted more input in the songwriting and the recording. It got bad enough that after completely chumping it at the Fillmore West in 1969, Creed Bratton decided he'd had enough and quit. And check this out. The remaining guitarist for the Grassroots, Warren Entner, he married Rosemarie Franklin, an actress from Wales who won the title of Miss World in 1961. And as a direct result of that marriage, the Grassroots decided to pass up on the songs Don't Pull Your Love,
Don't pull your love out on me, baby.
and Love Grows, parentheses, Where My Rosemary Goes, close parentheses,
Love grows where my rosemary goes.
because Rob Grill specifically was afraid that people might think they were his songs written about Warren's wife. The late 60s and early 70s live music culture meant more touring and therefore more emphasis on the touring band. So Rob Grill started to be the main focus of the Grassroots, rather than Sloan and Barry. But unfortunately, that only seems to have accelerated the revolving door nature of the band. And over the years, the Grassroots have had 52 members. And look, since the band was originally 2 songwriters plus the Bedouins, they haven't had any original members since 1966. Plus, Rob Grill, the singer whose voice is most closely linked to the sound of the Grassroots, unfortunately, he left us in 2011. And that's the 5 things for the Grassroots. I'm off to listen to Move Along, back soon with my first impression.
Here's a group called the Rolling Stones. Tell me what you think. So I brought them into my boss, and I said, these guys are going to be as big as the Beatles. And Mick heard me tell him I'm surfing, and Adler said to him, well, they're called the Baggies, and Mick said, they're not the Baggies, they're the Fantastic Baggies.
Based on what I'm hearing on Move Along, here's how I think I'd describe the sound of the Grassroots. It's classic rock guitars, strong but simple grooves, lots of early 70s rock-style vocal harmonies, and some occasionally interesting songwriting. They're like the Turtles, only without Flo and Eddie. Or like the Association, only without the bubblegum. Or like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, only without the horns. So, Three Dog Night? Basically, yeah. First song is The Runway. I've relayed many times on this show that one of my favorite things to find in music is a riff or a part that's so simple and so obvious that I come away amazed that no one's ever thought of it before. The verses on The Runway are kind of the opposite of that. Definitely heard this before. The choruses are nice though. Nice modulation. And the line, this hotel's got hot and cold running heartache in every room. I mean, cheesy, yeah, but clever. Another case of, yeah, I've definitely heard that before, for the intro to Monday Love. There's a touch more originality and a more mellow vibe in the rest of the song, but I don't know. Not that anything was poorly performed. I think I'm probably just reacting more to the inelegance of the lyrics in the verses.
Lord, what a night I had with Monday Love.
After Monday Love is Any Way the Wind Blows. They covered Frank Zappa? That's rad. Nope, sorry. This is very early 70s FM radio pop, complete with Beatles-style minor 4 chords and secondary dominance in the chorus. Pretty nice song overall, actually. Running Just to Get Her Home is kind of a slower tempo affair with just a really simple bass line, and that's augmented with a B3 and with some strings in the verses.
Since my baby left town.
There's a double time underneath descending diatonic chords in the chorus. Nothing in it feels all that original or all that interesting. It's not bad, but ultimately forgettable, seems to me. And now let's talk about Two Divided by Love. Speaking of Three Dog Night, Harry Nilsson writes a song called One. It gets covered by Three Dog Night, and they make it into an enormous hit. Then Brian Potter co-wrote a song called Two Divided by Love, which includes the lyric,
Two divided by love can only be one, and one is a lonely number.
Then it gets pitched to, of all bands, the Grassroots? Coincidence? Other than that, I don't know that I have much else to say about the song. It's early 70s pop, pleasant, catchy. Not all that exciting, though. Side 1 ends with Someone to Love. They covered Jefferson Airplane? That's rad. No, that's Somebody to Love. This is Someone to Love, so no. Someone to Love is kind of a gospel-inspired slow burn, with by far the most Three Dog Night vibes on the album. It's the vocal harmonies.
I've got to find me someone to love.
Plus a good amount of cowbell by the end. Face the music. I mean, I like the little ascending riff in the verses if for no other reason than it made me think about it a minute, since they used the flat 6 in a spot where I thought the 5 should go.
Now we've been running and hiding on the day.
But there's something about it that makes me think of the kind of overly squeakity clean commercial bands from the early 70s, like Up With People. You know, super attractive young people with matching outfits, big smiles, and dead soulless eyes. Give me the Ghiblies. The title track is next, Move Along. It was during the first verse that something fell into place for me. A good portion of this album seems to rely on moving chords over a set pedal tone or maybe like a set 3-note bass line. Many of the songs use this trick. Might be their secret ingredient or something. And wow, is that chorus overly dramatic. It's the strings. Next is One Word. They covered Mahavishnu? That's rad. Yeah, you wish. One Word is a mid-tempo early 70s FM pop singer-songwriter kind of a deal.
One word and we could be together like we ought to be.
Sounds like what would be the music over the opening credits of whatever Joanna Cameron's film debut might have been. Just because you had a crush on ISIS as a kid doesn't mean that people automatically know who Joanna Cameron is. And only one is slower, more soulful, heavy on the B3 and the shouty vocals.
One could make you fall in love. One's gonna make you sing.
Not much else to say about it otherwise. And the last song is Glory Bound. There's some Dan Electro choral electric sitar on this one, but other than that, it feels primarily like a crowd rocker. I 1,000% guarantee you that Rob Grill said, "Put your hands together for this one," when they played it live.
To that everlasting feeling.
And even though that's kind of the end of the album, on the version I listened to, there were a couple of bonus tracks, Sooner or Later, and Love Is What You Make It. And normally I would skip over the bonus stuff because I don't always know who will be hearing what version, but I did want to talk about Sooner or Later. Y'all, was this song used in any movies or TV shows or anything, or do I just know it because I'm old? I think we all know the answer to that one, Jim. Either way, I think this is my favorite tune on the album, believe it or not. Anyway, those are my first impressions. I'll be back soon with my final thoughts.
What are you going to do in South Africa?
I think we're going to tour around, do some shows in some different clubs and concerts, and some TV.
You're going to start a revolution. That's why you leave him back there.
You know what? Sorry to say it, but the music on Move Along by the Grassroots, it's not all that original to me. It's all stuff I've heard in other places, especially Three Dog Night. Quiet, you! And where was I? You were dumping on the Grassroots. Right. So no, not very original. Not all that weighty either. Pretty damn fluffy, in fact. All the dynamics feel forced and overly orchestrated. The vocals are good, but the lyrics, pretty standard mostly, even occasionally insipid. The instrumentation is all technically solid, but nothing really stands out either. No brilliant soloists, no organic moments of musical transcendence. But damn it, is this stuff catchy. Look, on paper, there's not a whole lot on Move Along by the Grassroots that should inspire me to play their album over and over again. Nothing on here corresponds with the kinds of things I usually look for, but I kept spinning it. It's working its way into my nervous system. I can't tell you how many times this week I just found myself singing, "Any way the wind blows, any way you want me to be." And not just that one, The Runway, Two Divided by Love, Sooner or Later, all week long. It kind of infuriating, actually. And here's where I reached my limits of self-analysis. Am I vibing to these songs because of some kind of latent nostalgia? Is this just a hankering for memories of childhood when everything sounded exactly like this? Or maybe these songs contain some measure of quantifiable catchiness. Some combination of factors that are specifically engineered to create earworms in those who encounter them. Some sort of deep psych Madison Avenue trickery, like how the color red is supposed to make you hungry, which is why all the fast food places use it. Come on, dude. If they had the power to do that in 1972, then by now they would have boiled all pop music down to just those catchy elements. That's all we'd ever... Wait a minute. Right? So begrudgingly, I think I have to say that the Grassroots is worth a listen. Who knew? That just leaves my 5-word overview of Move Along by the Grassroots. Sounds like Three Dog Night. Would you cut that out? No, my 5-word overview of Move Along by the Grassroots. Not great, but damn catchy. Mine was better. Now let's see what I will be listening to next. Rolling for year 1969. Nice. And now rolling for week and for month. The second week of December 1969. Hey, we just had second week of December 1971. That's crazy. And finally, chart position 1 to 100. Number 70 on the Hot 100 for the second week of December 1969. Position number 70. We have Get Rhythm by Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash? Heck yeah! But wait, I know for sure that Get Rhythm was the B-side of I Walk the Line, released in 1956. Why was it charting in 1969? Guess we'll find out. Anyway, the 1969 album it appears on is a compilation album called Get Rhythm. So that's what I'll be listening to next. Thanks for hanging out with me, everyone. I'll see you next week.